here with Peter Frank for our board spotlight, and we are here to learn a little bit more about Peter. I have about 5 questions, so thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad I have a chance to share a little bit about myself and what we're doing with the board.
All right, so what would be the best movie or book to describe your personal journey?
Well, my favorite movie is The Fugitive because I really like the old school Chicago scenes, but that is not my personal journey. My other favorite movie, yeah, not at all. I also really like Field of Dreams as a kid, and I feel like it's a really sort of dreamy movie, and I love baseball, so that's a big part of why I like that. And it's like a dreamy movie for kids and for adults and even like seniors to sort of understand their role in the world and around the game and with family and just trying to figure out how to be together as people. And it is about baseball, and it's really about family and life and kids and parents. And I don't know, I really like that movie, but and I really love baseball.
And that ties into your personal journey because
as a father, I have two little kids, and I'm trying to impart as much on them as I can and to help them succeed in life. And that was a big part of that movie. And it's not just about raising children, but it's about teaching people how to live a moral life and to make good choices. And I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they have a hard time making many choices in life. And so they need a lot of assistance. And I'm very eager for the day when they're on their own and able to live full lives without needing their mom and dad all the time. And I think like learning around games and working together with people is a good way to do that.
Well, I think you're doing that. I believe the pickles that you gave me on Saturday were prepared by your 8-year-old child.
Yeah, it's a family affair. So my 4-year-old helped put the little seeds in the dirt at first. We started them inside, and when they were ready to go outside, when it was warm enough, the whole family came together and we put them in our little garden in our backyard. And now I have just this insane amount of pickling cucumbers that I need to give. If you see me basically on the street, I'm going to put a jar of pickles in your hands right now because I have so many amazingly delicious pickles. But they get to see, it's amazing for the kids to see like that experience from like, there's a little seed that we got in the mail and we put it in the ground, and then it like ends up being this sort of a community experience. So I hope they're getting that full picture, but I'll keep giving that lesson to them every year as long as we're able to keep growing cucumbers in Chicago.
And I will gladly take another jar. I will even pay for future jars because they are delicious. Delicious. All right. So my next question is, what is it about co-ops that are special and unique?
So co-ops are incredibly unique in a lot of ways. Most people don't realize it just looking at them at a surface level. I first fell into co-ops by being a shopper at a consumer food co-op in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And to me, it was just this interesting grocery store that had people working there that were really amazing, and the food was what I was looking for. But then you dig under the surface and realize, oh, this is democratically controlled by thousands of people who live here and use the co-op services on a regular basis. And that was mind-blowing to me. And at that time, I was looking for something to do professionally that was going to actually make a real change. And a lot of the problems that I see that the world has is through this natural desire, built-in desire of businesses to maximize profit at all costs. And when you flip that script from being one of a motivation of chasing profit to serving members, that creates wildly different outcomes for a business and for the people that are involved in it, whether they're the shoppers, the workers, the vendors that are partners with them. It's more about balancing that fairness than it is about some owner or a group of owners trying to get a second boat or something rather than treating people fairly. But that's radically different than, if you look at Dill Pickle versus like a Target or Jewel Osco or anything that's like owned, publicly traded company. Like they are required by law to maximize profit. And if their board members make decisions that don't lead towards that, they're breaking the law. Whereas the Dill Pickle is required by law to serve its members and follow its own policies and its bylaws, which require us to return any profit back to our members. So there is no hoarding of cash, at least from a legal standpoint. But yeah, that's sort of it from a very broad level. But I'm really into worker co-ops. I've thought that consumer co-ops, I consider them to be like a gateway drug into broader forms of cooperation, whether it's housing co-ops, credit unions. There's a lot of interesting creative models that people are exploring out there.
Cooperatives are an alternative to capitalism. You would think that more would exist around the world. It's a surprise that there aren't more.
It's hard. I mean, I think the thing is that a lot of people are interested in the model that I found in my work. That people are like, oh, this seems like a good idea, but it's extraordinarily hard to start a new co-op. It's hard to maintain an existing co-op because you're not just running a business, you're also managing an association of people to then manage that business properly. And if there's breakdowns in any of those categories or areas, like the co-op's in trouble. And with new co-ops, startups, there's those founders they go through an extraordinary sacrifice. Actually, any business founder is working incredibly hard to get this business off the ground. They often go long stretches of time without being paid, and have to raise money from their family and friends. And that's easier to do when you're trying to make a boatload of money. Like there's this giant reward waiting for a business owner if they can make a successful business. But for a co-op, you're sharing that. You're putting in the sacrifice to then give to future generations of co-op owners. There's a lot of reasons probably why there aren't more co-ops, but I see that as one of the big barriers. Is just starting a business is really, really hard. And starting a co-op is extra hard. It involves a lot of generosity and personal sacrifice by the founders.
Especially in Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah. Some places it's harder to start businesses, for sure.
Well, that segues to my next question. How do you see the future of grocery co-ops expanding, especially in major cities like Chicago and New York?
I'm not sure that they will. I hope they will. I think that I would say that the way that it could happen is if communities are practicing working together and organized together and are solving problems together. They can then they have practice organizing already and being together and doing things like raising money or organizing for causes. But if it's a group of people, neighbors who don't know each other, don't work together at all, and they are starting a project for the very first time to start a multi-million-dollar, really complicated business, the odds of success are not very high. You're not going to be able to raise the money you need. Or if you still open, you're not opening in a position to compete with a lot of other grocery stores who are competing for your shopping dollars. And there's a lot of money to be made in big cities. And everyone's selling natural foods products now. You can go to Target and buy a lot of products, but it's not the same, of course. So I think if people understand that like this thing is ours and we need this as a community, then it can thrive and succeed. But I think co-ops are most useful when they're solving problems. I think some people have started co-ops because they want to have this funky grocery store. But if they're not actually solving a problem in their lives, they're not going to go out of their way to shop there. They're not going to volunteer insane amounts of time to make it go if they're perfectly satisfied with another grocery store just down the street. So I think in communities where there aren't good grocery options, those are communities where I think food co-ops could work. Consumer co-ops of all types could work. I mean, credit unions should be popping up in neighborhoods that are unbanked. There's a lot of neighborhoods that don't give people access to their own money. And credit unions can solve that problem too. Similar way that a food co-op could, provide access to quality food in a neighborhood that doesn't have it otherwise. But it's so hard. Grocery stores are very expensive to start. and they're complicated to manage and keep going.
Yeah, right. If there isn't a problem, if it's not broken, why fix it? But I mean, it took the Dill Pickle 5 years to open its doors after the seed was planted by Kathleen Duffy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's possible if people are committed and rooted in the community, and if there is a problem or a need that the co-op is addressing, for sure. Anything's possible if you put your mind to it. If you believe in it.
That 5 years, if that Logan Square continued to show over that 5 years that they wanted this, they continue to want the Dill Pickle to exist. I think a lot of startup food co-ops that I've seen may only last like a year or two in their organizing because there just isn't enough interest in the community for it. I started a food co-op in Philadelphia that took us 10 years to get going, and it wouldn't die. You couldn't kill that startup because the community still wanted it, kept wanting it, and people kept joining and kept lending money to it and kept participating and showing up to volunteer. And just because if I stepped aside and said, I don't think this is going to work here, that's not my choice alone. This is a co-op owned by now, growing numbers of people, hundreds of families, and it can just keep going without my involvement or someone else's. But yeah, Logan Square showed that we really wanted a food co-op and spent 5 years working hard for it. And then now the time since then, keeping it going.
Well, you touched on, I heard you mention Philly. I know you're from Chicago, but you have lived in Philadelphia. Can you describe the differences you experienced?
Yeah, I think Chicago and Philly are very similar cities in a lot of ways. Chicago is much larger than Philadelphia in terms of its population, but in terms of, it feels similar culturally. I think Chicagoans like Philly from what my experience, and Philadelphians love Chicago. So there is this vibe there between the two that is similar and exciting. But I've been doing co-op organizing work in both Chicago, and I got that work started in Philly. I think Philly has a longer history of co-ops. Co-ops go back to Ben Franklin, and in Philadelphia, he started an insurance mutual company, which was a cooperative, because houses kept burning down and people didn't know how to deal with it. So they formed a co-op to help with that. And there have been consumer food co-ops in Philly since the 19th century. So it was part of first earliest worker co-ops were formed in Philly as part of the early formations of the labor movement. And so there's been a constant history of co-op organizing in that city for a very, very long time. Whereas in Chicago, there have been co-ops, but it hasn't been this continuous sort of history. There were other food co-ops in Chicago, and now we're the only ones operating in Chicago at the Dill Pickle. There was a classic food co-op in Hyde Park that was around for a very long time, but not anymore. So right now, the co-op organizing work that I'm doing in Chicago is more centered around worker co-ops, because there's a lot of energy, particularly in immigrant communities in Chicago, to form co-ops so they can have legal access to paid work, support each other, groups of people that can support each other, whether it's like New Era Windows on the South Side, or and then I'm also working with Shy Fresh Kitchen. My consulting firm helped incubate that worker co-op, but that is owned by formerly incarcerated folks. So these are co-ops that are forming to help address real life or death sort of situations for folks, and the co-op provides a meaningful employment for people who are excluded from economic prosperity otherwise. And there's a lot of similarities between the worker co-op movement in Chicago and Philadelphia too. I think actually in Chicago it's a little bit more advanced and at a larger scale, particularly more recently. A lot of talent in both cities and a lot of love between the two. I'm trying to foster that love too.
I feel it. I have only been to Philadelphia once in high school for a college tour. I visited Temple University, and I do recall Philadelphia resonating with me, probably because of the rich history. I remember visiting the Liberty Bell, but I'll definitely have to look into Ben Franklin and the cooperative movement in Philly. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, you should go check out Mariposa Food Co-op. If you've been to a board meeting, I probably mentioned them at least once, as this was something that we encountered there. So Mariposa, I feel like, is this like cousin, sister sort of co-op, food co-op to Dill Pickle. Also operating in a big city, in a walkable neighborhood, and has awesome radical politics that are being played out in a consumer food co-op, and trying to grapple with what should we be as an organization, how do we support everybody in our community. And they're dealing with issues of gentrification, and because of where they're positioned near the University of Pennsylvania and Drexel University in West Philly. So if you're really looking to find some co-op buddies in the world, they're on Baltimore Avenue in West Philly.
Yeah, I would love to go. I've heard about or known about Mariposa since I started working at the Dill Pickle in 2013. So it's on my bucket list.
Good.
All right, so my last question. When you have time to relax, what activity is best for you to unwind, to escape the weight of the world?
Ooh. I have 3 trees in my backyard. I'm very fortunate, and they're tall enough and sturdy enough for me to set up some hammocks. I love to just sit in the hammock and turn everything off. I got about 3 minutes of that yesterday before I needed to attend to my 4-year-old. But as whenever I have the opportunity, I just want to lay down and swing a little bit and look at the sky, and just really.
It's a perfect way to unwind.
It's great.
Well, that concludes my questionnaire. Do you have anything you want to share, add, or ask?
No, I mean, I appreciate this. I hope that folks will want to engage with the Dill Pickles operations and governance and decision making. We have like 3,000 household members, and we just expect a tiny portion to participate. And the more that we can grow that, the stronger this co-op will be, the more leaders that we'll have. I mean, this is a multi-generational experience that we're a part of, that, Kath Duffy handed it off to other leaders. She got it going. And I'm currently here in the position of board member right now, but I'm not going to be there forever. And it's about this community embracing this co-op and wanting to continue to invest themselves and their time and energy into it to keep it handed over to the next generation. So come to our boring board meetings once a month, and maybe we'll try to have it be more interesting. We have owner engagement committee meetings, like tonight. There's one at 5. And then we have different opportunities that we're trying to introduce over and over, more and more so, to help Logan Square residents and our members engage with this awesome institution that is more radical and awesome than folks realize just by walking down the street.
Yeah, I have a feeling there's going to be more participation from the membership.
Love it.
Just with everything going on, the labor relations.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of this, is that people are more aware, and we provide a platform for folks to disagree or to learn. And I think this is an incredible opportunity that we're trying to get folks to engage and support us. Buy as many groceries as you possibly can at the co-op right now, please.
Yes,
I'm trying.
Let's plug as much as possible. Well, thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Jessica. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.